Well, he's a software pioneer, co-founder of Microsoft. He's one of the world's greatest philanthropists. He's an idol of mine, and it's wonderful to have Bill Gates back in our studios. I met you a couple of months back, quite a few months back in Palm Springs for your book. It's wonderful to have this opportunity to speak to you once again. You're here in Davos at a time which is very uncomfortable, some would say. Some would say it's unpredictable. Your focus has been on health, development, education, and yet it seems that the world around us is focusing on geopolitical tensions. Is that a concern for you?
Well, absolutely. The world does best when we get along, share with each other, trade with each other. There's always been a bit of tension, but, we've avoided using nuclear weapons. Typically trade has gone up for mutual benefit. Whenever we have innovation, no matter what country it comes from, the whole world benefits. So, the turmoil in the world is a concern to me, but I'm still optimistic that the innovation and the fact that people will support and care for each other, that we'll get through what is far more tumultuous time than I thought it would be.
Is this the most tumultuous time for you in all your decades in observing the world around? Is this perhaps the most tense Davos?
The only other time I'd say is comparable was in the 1960s. You had the Vietnam War, protests, you had unrest in American cities, you had political assassinations, and it really felt like a very tough time. We did get through that. The U.S., came out of that as a stronger country. And so I'm hopeful that how we value alliances and we behave in a predictable way, have win-win relationships. I hope that, out of this tumultuous period, we learn that that's best for everyone.
A lot of the work that you focus on now is on the health of children. And it's been a constant concern for you that we as countries, people around the world, are under investing when it comes to, the health of children. Going forward, in terms of your own investments, in terms of your own programs, and if we can talk perhaps about India, how do you believe the health of children needs to be looked at much more closely?
Well, the progress since the Gates Foundation was started in the year 2000 has been nothing short of miraculous. Half as many children die today as died at the turn of the century, and India has been a significant part of that. And our partnership with the Indian government to say, okay, let's add new vaccines, or let's add digital systems to track the inventory and the hiring, and make sure that the primary healthcare system, as the economy grows and you put more resource into it, that it's constantly improving. Obviously the digital system Aadhaar is helping the entire Indian economy, but we see that particularly in the health sector, that there's a lot less paperwork and people understand what their health status is. So in the same way that we've worked with India these last 25 years for this next phase where AI will come in and play a big role, I would expect that the most exciting pioneer work, a lot of that will come out of India. And so I'm optimistic that we can cut childhood death in half again over the next 20 years, getting it below 2.5 million a year.
It's interesting that you mentioned Aadhaar. That is very much our digital backbone. We've got something called DigiLocker as well, so it's a safe place to secure, to have your details. Is that a model that you believe can be replicated elsewhere, something like Aadhaar?
Absolutely. So, philanthropists like Nana Neelankani and the Gates Foundation are funding work at places like IIT Delhi to provide software and tailor it so that it'll work for all the countries of the world. And so, for example, in Africa, we have dozens of countries now that are taking the identity system, which that open source thing is called MOSIP, but it's basically a implementable form of Aadhaar for them. And they're thrilled that India led the way, proved that it's working, and that's a big contribution to help those governments gain the efficiencies that India has seen.
AI is obviously a great opportunity, but also a big concern. How does AI help in terms of some of the development projects that you are interested in, whether it's with farmers or it's with education? And every time I speak to you, AI has evolved. So while you talk about the good things, what are some of the things that concern you?
Well, first, let's start with the good things. AI, as you say, keeps getting better. And so the idea that in education we can create a tutor that knows how to motivate you and knows what you know and what you still need to learn. In agriculture, we should be able to give better advice to a poor smallholder than even, the rich farmers getting today, because the weather and the prices and the varieties and the soil, we'll build systems that know that, which there's been some pilot work for that already in India. Finally, in health, this idea there's never going to be enough doctors for all your health needs, including mental health needs. So having a virtual doctor that in your local language you can consult and, it's free to you. And so it helps you know when to go to the health system and, gets rid of the paperwork there. It's very, very promising. And so when I go to the AI summit...
Yes, that's a big announcement. Mr. Gates is going to be in India soon, middle of next month.
Yeah, so Prime Minister Modi's made this a big priority. And I'm thrilled that I and the Gates Foundation across the board will be there because, we think the commitment of the government to use AI for citizens, including in the health sector, will not only help India, it'll help the entire world. And so the benefits here of great diagnosis very early on, of saving costs, saving time, it's really hard to overstate that. AI will bring turmoil as well because, some jobs will go away, some new jobs will come in, and so governments will have to think how they deal with that. But, everything we do in health and education and agriculture, actually making sure there's no delay between when rich countries are using these technologies and even, say, a less developed country in Africa gets access. That's a big mission for the Gates Foundation in our final 20 years.
What about the dangerous things of AI, the fact that it's being weaponized? At heart, you are a coder to the core. I mean, that's what you built your reputation and Microsoft on. The software is moving really fast. It's dangerous. It's being weaponized. It's thinking autonomously. There are no global standards on what should and shouldn't be. Is that not the edge of AI which we need to avoid?
Well, whenever we have new advance, it's used by good people for good and bad people for bad. And so, for example, cyber attacks, unless you have the good people using AI for cyber defense, then yeah, the bad people get the upper hand. The way we design weapons and, how drones are autonomous and, boats and submarines, I'm not an expert in that area, but it, means there'll be a new generation of weapons, and hopefully we can have, stability where we don't get imbalance that leads to war there. And there'll be fraud, there'll be fake videos. People are going to have to be a little more careful when they see a video, not to think just because it's a video that it's necessarily the case. In fact, we'll have to mark videos in terms of who they come from. Did it come from a reputable news organization that really checked that out?
So fake news is your concern, and AI towards creating fake identities and fake information. We already see so much of that, and that's a cause of that's a problem, isn't it?
It is, although we'll use AI to detect some of that. So it's measure countermeasure. The good guys will have to invest and get better and try and stay ahead of that. The other challenge is that there will be shifts in that job market, and so every government will have to decide, okay, given that AI overall is helpful, where are the new opportunities? Do you retrain people? Do you change your tax system? So far, the impact has been pretty modest, but I'd say in the next 4 to 5 years, both in the white-collar side and even in the blue-collar side, as these robots are starting to get better, it'll mean the government will have to step up and deal with the equity issues.
Sure. AI and India, what role do you believe, going forward, development of AI and various technologies out of India would be particularly useful?
Well, certainly the global companies all have fantastic engineering groups in India that are, doing absolutely state-of-the-art work.
And they're all lined up over here in Davos.
And so our, Microsoft, benefits incredibly from the great talents that's there. I think India, a lot of it will be how AI is applied. These foundational models will be kind of global, and because there's so much competition, the very best ones are available, either open source or non-open source. And it's the layer on top of that that connects you to the health system. Or, India's doing a very good job making sure all of the Indian languages that the data is gathered, and saying to the AI providers, hey, take this data so that in your multimedia capabilities, it's not just English, it's every language in the country. And so it's early days for AI, but already the kind of pilots I'm seeing in health and education, very promising. And, India is kind of less regulated, but has capacity. So in many of these cases, I think it'll get out in front. It all builds on the digital platform where India has been ahead.
You're looking at Horizon 1000 that targets many parts of Africa. That's also premised largely on AI. How is that going to work?
Well, clinics in Africa are very overloaded. You come in the morning and you wait. You fill out a lot of paperwork. You have to re-describe to different people what you've gone through. We think by putting AI in there, doing the transcript, that can get rid of the paperwork. We can organize when you come in so that you're not waiting as long. We can summarize the situation so the clinician sees what they're dealing with very efficiently. Some patients, if they're doing well, we can say, no, you don't need to go to the clinic. And others, we can look at their symptoms and encourage them to go in. And so it's hard to overstate the shortage of capability in these systems. I mean, even versus India, they have 20 at this many doctors. And so we announced the Gates Foundation with OpenAI that we'll be doing piloting in that Horizon 1000 program, which starts in Rwanda.
Sure. And a final question to you. In a blog you wrote recently called Optimism with Footnotes, what keeps you optimistic in this present environment? I'm not optimistic, I must confess.
Think today, we're coming up with ways to avoid people getting Alzheimer's. The drugs that avoid obesity are going to be so cheap and accessible that, throughout India, people will take advantage of that. Is it better to be a woman today than 20 years ago? Is it better to be a gay person today than 20 years ago? I mean, innovation gives us a lot of new capacity. It's very human to be afraid about what comes next. And, we still have nuclear weapons. We have ways that these AIs, if we don't stay on top of it, they could create problems. And so those are my footnotes, is not to take for granted that this will go well. Lack of cooperation in the world today, we've kind of reached a new low. But, I think the logic, of the U.S. and India having a strong relationship will win out, just like, between many countries. So, yes, I'm an optimist.
Mr. Gates, it's been wonderful speaking to you, sharing your thoughts on AI, on development, on education, and the future over there. Let's hope the world around us is more stable, perhaps. But thank you very much once again for speaking to NDTV. Thank you, sir.
You.
Thank you.